Hi, everyone, and welcome to another regularly scheduled Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Noor Kyle,
And I am the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
and thanks for joining us. We have just started our retreat yesterday, but this is our normal time together where we get everybody involved on YouTube and such. And for those of you who are toughing it out and joining us both for the retreat and for our regular Sunday talks in the same weekend, troopers, thank you so much for being here. So, we have an interesting topic tonight. We're kind of taking a dip into the more traditional spiritual aspect of things. But before we get into that, we of course have to do our YouTube spiel.
All right. So, exciting, good news, wonderful news. This week and this week only, you can subscribe to the Nine-Sided Circle for free, 100%, no charge. And so I suggest and would really wish you to take us up on this. Just go down and click that subscribe button, and it won't cost you a dime. So, and we would really appreciate it. And like our video, it makes us happy. And the more you like our videos, the less blurry I get.
One hopes, right?
One hopes, yes.
Yes.
So yeah, and make a comment because we love to hear from you. And we try and answer every comment unless we don't know. And if we don't know, we'll do our best to make something up that sounds plausible.
Yeah, and sometimes we take our time to think about a quality answer. So, if you don't get an immediate response, sometimes that's what's up. We're just thinking, how do I respond thoughtfully to this excellent question? So,
Yeah, some questions it's taken me weeks and weeks to come up with the right answer for.
but in the meantime, we do the best we can and we get a lot of cool comments and great feedback quite often, and we really appreciate that.
Yes.
All right, other than that, do we have any updates to make?
It's Halloween. Yay!
Yay! Yes! Some of us are a little bit, gussied up. Levita's wearing her beautiful crown. I'm wearing my cute satin headband thing that I got from downtown San Francisco a few weeks ago. So it's nice to have an opportunity to wear it. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us once again. Whether you are a frequent visitor or someone who's just popping in, we're very happy to have you. All right, so I think for now that's all we got. And with that said, we can jump into our topic tonight. We are going to be talking about saints. We're going to talk about the concept of saints. What's the significance of saints? Why even bother talking about them here? And Mushtaq is going to lead us in that. Are we talking specifically about Islamic saints this evening, or saints
Well,
in general?
we're gonna kind of focus in on that a little bit more, just because I can say more intelligent things
Mm-hmm.
about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, every culture has its saints of one form or another. Various Christian groups have saints. Even the ones who don't talk about saints have saints. I mean, they talk about Saint John and Saint Thomas and Saint this and Saint that. You know,
Yep. And we'll
in
find that
India,
the
they have like you can kick over every rock and you find a saint. They're all over the place.
yeah, so I mean, you can already begin to see that the way that we conceptualize saints in different cultures varies. And that's going to be an important part of how they are understood within the community to whom they are important, to whom they are special.
Yep. So, um, in the English speaking word, we have the word saint, which comes from the Latin. Uh, and I'm actually pulling up my etymology dictionary, but I will tell you it comes from the same word as sacred. And that comes from the concept of being set aside. So, You know, there's this idea of a canonized person in certain sects of Christianity where everybody gets together after somebody's dead and decide that they have to be a saint because of various different things, miracles are performed and all of that. That's not the kind of sainthood I'm interested in. Jewish sainthood, Islamic sainthood, Hindu sainthood have different and to me more comfortable connotations. In Arabic, the word that we usually translate as saint is wali, W-A-L-I, wali. And that literally means the friend. So we would say saints are the friends of God. It's also a name of God. God is a friend to people. People are friends to God. If you're a friend back to God, then we would think of you as a saint. What does that mean, though? There are all of these stories in the Sufi world about people who are friends of God and nobody even knows. For those of you who read the actual announcement of the group, anybody here do that? Actually read it? So you saw the story about the Prophet Muhammad telling Abu Hurayra that somebody's coming, and he says he is one of the 7 people through whom God diverts punishment from the earth's inhabitants. And this guy's a nobody. He's this, as he's described, this bald, maimed, impoverished dude who, brings water into the mosque.
A foreigner. That was
Yeah.
another aspect to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quote unquote foreigner, of course.
Yep. So there's an idea that a person who is a friend of God might not even know that they're a friend of God. There's nothing outwardly special about them. And some saints do miracles. Islamic saints oftentimes don't until after they're dead, and then people attribute miracles to them. But oftentimes in their lives, they're these quiet, unassuming individuals who are just good. They're just, you get around them and they feel good.
So good in what way? Let's say more about that. Like,
Good in the sense that their existence benefits people in some way. There's, I think he's still around. I think he's still alive. For years, there was this Hindu guy that every year during Ramadan would make a point of getting up before sunrise and going through his village and waking up all of the Muslim members of the village so that they could get up in time to eat before fasting started. And he never got anything for that, other than probably a lot of good wishes and maybe a few bad wishes where people going, gee, I wish I could just stay asleep. But mostly good wishes to him.
yeah, we have a question from Sydney.
Yeah.
Sydney asks, are they somewhat the idealization of human adulthood or human evolution?
Oftentimes, though, sometimes they may not seem like it to the untrained eye because some of them seem a little crazy, but they're really nice. Nor is your speaker on?
Well, I had my mute button not on. Are you having feedback over there?
A little bit. Um, where was I? Oh, yeah. Um, rather than being anybody special to the outward, they are just like, this is the person who you would want living next door to you. This is the person who you enjoy meeting while they're walking down the road, or they're shopping next to you at the market, and you look at them and they feel good.
Something about their presence feels good.
Yeah.
Mm. And you're saying it might not even be immediately placeable. It's just a very strong, abiding sense of perhaps this person has a good heart, or my mood is always uplifted when I encounter this person. That kind of thing.
Yeah. And Sydney asked, do I think the burger guy was a saint? Almost undoubtedly.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, how does one become a saint? And and Jayesh says maybe they leave more for others than for themselves. Yeah, almost all the time. Um,
Yes. Mr. asks, so this saint seems like they're not necessarily always an awake person?
um, sometimes no, I suppose. Though I suspect most of the time, yes. The thing that makes somebody a saint is not that they develop superhuman powers. You can have superhuman powers and not be a saint. As a matter of fact, you're more likely not to be a saint with the superhuman powers. But what makes them a saint is that they are a friend of God. Think about it. How are you when you act as a friend to somebody? Think about your best friend in the whole world. How do you relate to them? This is not a rhetorical question. How do you relate to your best friend?
Perhaps you're playful with them in a
Sometimes.
warm way? Yeah.
So, my best friend is somebody who I think about all the time. I remember my best friend every day, throughout the day. There are very few times when I don't remember them.
And you're using remember in the sense that we often use it here, like
Yes.
kind of meditating on them in a way, in a
Yeah.
consideration for them, appreciation of them.
Yeah,
Sure.
and an attentiveness to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
So if you were a friend of God, you might ask yourself on a pretty regular basis, what does God need today? Which is a silly question because God doesn't need anything. And yet, there is an answer to that.
Yeah, we have a few comments.
Okay, yeah, let's look at these comments.
So, Shuri, I'm gonna backtrack. I just want to make sure we stay with the topics. But Shuri offers that you treat your best friend with love and respect and with truth. Mr. Keem says, with love for the friend. And yeah, these are all qualities that can play an actually large part in our relationship with what we're calling God, the divine, the essence. So Nancy has a question. I just want to touch on that. She
Mm-hmm.
says, do saints actually like people?
Um, I would imagine so.
Hmm. I mean, they could be like old grumpy codgers who ultimately, underneath it all, respect humanity or,
Yeah.
being humane and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I couldn't generalize that question because I imagine that there might be some really grumpy saints out there who have no use for people because it distracts them from the reality of the divine unity.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that would be the exception rather than the rule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good question, though.
I don't know if the grumpy ones would be the ones that you want to be around.
I guess it would also depend on how well you actually see them as full-fledged human beings, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather, for instance, is a very grumpy old codger, and yet I've been around him long enough to know that there is so much more to him that I love, that I can even love his grumpiness.
Yeah, for that matter, I'm a grumpy old codger.
Yeah.
And you put up with me.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So thanks, Nancy. So where were we?
I don't know. Where are we?
We are talking about being friends with the one.
Yes. And that may seem, simplistic. And yet, by all accounts, that's what a saint is. They are the friends of God. And when you're the friend of God and God is your friend, life is pretty good, more or less.
So that's one thing that's unique about this definition of a saint, is that it's not institutionally a doled out title as it often or always is in, say, Catholicism. You have a board who goes and looks for evidence and proofs of miracles happening in order to offer sainthood to some person who died recently or several years ago or 100 years ago. And this is different from that. This is way less of an institutionalized notion of sainthood. Yes, Nancy says, in regard to human friends, recognize and appreciate their good points. Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think, Noor? This can't all just be me blathering. You must blather a little bit yourself.
I'm doing my share of blathering. I mean, I don't have a lot of familiarity with Christian sainthood because although that is the tradition of my birth, I never really got involved with it in such a way that I think there's something having to do with communion, and then you adopt like a favorite saint as your patron and all that stuff. I have no experience with that. But as far as my experience of saints in the Islamic tradition, I guess I sort of think of them as mentors, you know, from history, that kind of thing. Jayesh asks, why are saints like saints?
That's like asking, why is water like water?
Do you want to elaborate, Jayesh?
Yeah, turn on your microphone. Tell us
Yeah.
about this.
So you can ponder on the qualities of the person who is holding sainthood, and that can expand the path, or they can expand some light that why the person is having these qualities, and uh, uh, what can be learned from his life, his way of living, and maybe that can help us on the work.
Yeah, that's a good question because that gets into the next thing that I wanted to talk about. What good are saints? But yeah, so there is a certain value in connecting with saints, or so they say. In Sufism, there is this practice called rabita. Rabita means to make connection. And you can make connection with anything. In many Sufi orders, you are taught to make a connection with your teacher, and the teacher makes a connection with you, and something flows along that line. But this is probably for us the single most valuable thing for being around saints, whether they are saints that are living next door to you or saints that are have lived before, because you know there is a certain level of being where time is completely irrelevant. So you can make connection with some of these saintly figures, the ones that are awake, and there is a subtle something that flows along those lines, and you can, if you're lucky and you keep your awareness, you can learn from that. So who can think of a saint that they like?
In what tradition?
Any tradition you want.
Any tradition you want, guys. Okay. I have one in mind, but I don't know if I should go first.
Well, somebody's gotta go.
Zainab, do you have any in mind? She just mentioned one. Yeah.
Ali.
Yes.
One of my favorite saints.
Yeah. Does anything come to mind about him specifically? Do you want to unmute and share about that?
Tukaram Maharaj was a great Maharashtrian saint. And whenever I remember him, I feel the vibes of getting intoxicated with God's love because he kept chanting God's name all the time. And I heard one story about him that there were three mountains near his hometown. So he usually get out and go up to the any of the mountain and do chanting. And somebody comes and searching for him. So and asked his wife, "Where is he?" So she would tell the person that you can go to any mountain, and at the bottom of the mountain you can pick up any stone, and if you are able to listen to the God's name, he is there on that mountain.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that you can.
I'm not sure the story is right, but then it gives me so much positive vibes and love for God.
Yeah. So, and you feel connection to this person, right? So, along that line of connection, um, you can remember them. And in that memory, that is exactly like picking up the stone and listening. And there is some benefit in that.
Maybe time time cuts down and we can connect the person in the moment
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah, at the place where you connect through Rabita, there is no time. Their time and your time become the same time. They are not dead. They are not in the past. They exist in that moment, or so they say. This is all very woo-woo stuff, but every now and again I feel like doing woo-woo stuff.
It's good to dip into the woo-woo stuff at least every once in a while. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
thinking of Rabia.
yeah, I thought of Rabia as well. Ali is, they actually call him the Wali Allah. And so he is the friend of God. He's probably the single best example of what this means. Because if you think of him, or at least if I think of him, I think of somebody who's incredibly strong and yet incredibly loving and is will do the right thing no matter what. Even if it hurts him to do the right thing, he'll do the right thing. And that is a good model for life. Zainab, say something about it.
His strength and courage is quite lifts, like it's like a hand holding your hand. That maybe that's why when we're doing something really heavy, we have to lift something. Just say Ya Ali, like he gives that extra push.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, he feeds the poor. He eats the last person. Like he's very kind to his people.
Yeah. He's constantly putting the needs of the people around him before his own. So there are examples, and everybody can think of an example like this. I mean, there's enough saints in the world that you can find one. And then it's just a matter of letting yourself feel the connection to them. And the connection doesn't have to be strong and powerful. It can be just a tiny little thread. And if you think it's not real, that's okay too. It doesn't have to be real. I mean, who can say that something like that is real or not real? The question is it useful? So, sainthood. It's a weird thing. I think the best way to think about it is not somebody with superhuman powers or who can do miracles or any of that kind of stuff. Though things look like that sometimes, but it is the idea of being a friend to the one. So, if you wanted to be a saint, that's how you would do it. Very, very simple. Be a friend to the one. Sooner or later, this camera's going to come back, and there we go. So what does that look like? What would it look like if you were a friend of God's? Would you guys get together and hang out on the weekends? How do you see God? If God is your friend, how do you see him? Or her? Or it? Or them? Don't everybody talk at once.
Sydney, do you want to offer anything up?
I think this idea of remembrance is probably important, but that needs to be post-seeded by this making connection first.
Yes.
So then you make connection, and then it's just this remembrance of that connection.
Yeah. And they say that when you have that connection, there is something that moves through it. So if you have that connection with the one, with the divine unity, with God, then there is an energy that moves back and forth between that connection. Or so they say. It could be an illusion. We don't know. And do we even care?
Does it really matter?
And as far as I can tell, no, it doesn't.
Shuri, what's coming up for you?
Apologies for being a bit late. So I'm just thinking about when you're talking about remembering and qualifying who a saint is. So are you saying like there's a virtue or a particular thing that they've done, and the remembering is the recognition of that particular thing that they're special for, what makes them special or outstanding? And having done a particular thing that is considered a virtue, and keeping it alive, the vibration of it by through the remembering and trying to practice the same,
That's definitely one way to do it.
So when the forgetting is almost like a sin, because it's a sin as a separation from God. You're doing something that's out of line with the one. So a saint is doing something that is in line with the will of God, or surrendering to the idea of being the will of God, or the one, the will of what's the will? So why are we existing? Why are we together? Why are we trying to connect? Why are we trying to be loving and respectable and honorable towards one another? The saint is remembered for having sustained that, recognized for that. So these are all the things that are fluttering around in my head. Am I on the right track, or have I gone off on my own personal
No,
delusion?
that is definitely a big part of it. And particular virtues of a particular saint are good to remember. And you can also just generally remember the person as being this warm, caring individual, maybe, or a strong individual.
Who quite possibly has feet of clay.
Yeah, well, almost undoubtedly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the idea that there is a human being out there in the world that doesn't have feet of clay is, as far as I can tell, a myth.
Mm. And
The
having
most, yeah, go ahead.
with a person, with a saint having feet of clay actually helps our humanness recognize that this is not an unattainable virtue or an unattainable practice,
Yeah,
because we are connected in the same. So if we elevate a saint too high, that's not particularly useful in my eyes.
no, a saint needs to have their humanity intact.
Mm. Mm.
Otherwise, they're not of particular use. I mean, they can be amazing humans,
Mm.
but their humanity must still be there.
Mm.
If they have transcended their humanity, they are of less use to us in a lot of ways.
Mm.
And this is why, sometimes uh, profound beings manifest themselves as human beings. You know, Krishna, who is like one of the great aspects of God, was a chariot driver. He was the dude who tended the horses and drove the chariot for Arjuna.
Mm.
And if he had not taken on that role, it would have been much harder for people to relate to him.
Mm.
And Ali, the prophet was raised up to his awakening through divine intervention. Ali did it through his own work. And so, in some ways, that makes him more approachable. Nobody can be a prophet, but you can be a friend to God.
Is it similar to being a bodhisattva? Not that you resist enlightenment and come back here, but the practice of being a better person.
Yeah, something like that.
I think it's somewhat similar in
Yeah.
sentiment. Yeah. I mean, the thing about saints in the context we're talking about is that I think we may have said this already, but saints generally aren't thinking about being saints, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, you walk up to somebody and go, "Hey, you're a saint," and they look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they're not striving for sainthood in a self-conscious, I want to get a leg up and prove I'm a good person and have everybody know about it, in kind of like a look at my gold star kind of way.
Egotistical way where it's
Yeah.
driven by the robot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to last week's talk, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about the question of working with saints honest, because it seems like it's a thing that could go wrong one way and another.
Oh, hell yeah. So say more about that.
Well, I'm not very sure, but it seems to me that one way things could go wrong is that you delegate the work of being a friend to God to the saint instead of having to do it yourself.
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
good point. And that's true. The other thing that you do is you give up your free will to somebody who claims to be a saint or enlightened or whatever. And in which case, you never reach adulthood yourself.
Or just, if you've got institutionalized connection with saints, whether it's the Catholic style or the Sufi style, whatever, it becomes a habit instead of actually making the connection fresh.
In a way, yeah. I mean, that gets into taking the connection for granted as well. I mean, not just talking about unhealthy dynamics in the sense of giving up your agency, but also in the sense of, are you actively invested in that connection, or are you just kind of claiming it like claiming a bracelet, like, oh, I wear this from time to time and it's there, it's special, but you're not actively appreciative of that connection.
That's kind of what I was thinking. It's like making the pilgrimage to the shrine. Hey, I made the pilgrimage.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned pilgrimages because in a lot of traditions, that is a big part of it, is you go and visit perhaps where the body of a saint is buried, or where a piece of clothing that they wore is stored and kept safe, or a place where there's some kind of energetic or historical significance connected to that individual. And yeah, I mean, people go to these places hungry for that connection. And I guess it could be like, if one isn't careful, collecting Pokemon. Like, I showed up there, I went there, now on to the next one, and to the next one, and the next one. Gotta touch them all, that kind of thing.
Idris Shah complained about people asking what kind of tea he drank so that they could drink that tea and remember him. And, he's sort of yelling, but that's missing the point.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so Noor likes redbush tea, ribose tea. Just so if you wanted to know.
Right. Oh, I see where you're going with this now. Yeah. Drink it because you enjoy it, please. Yes. Yes, Cherie mentioned saint hopping. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
But that's part of a deeper sleepness too, to be saint hopping and to be looking for something and yearning for something. But you've got a preconceived idea of what you think it is. And so you're trying to find something that'll fit instead of seeing things as they are. And often if they're as they are, they're actually mirroring your own inadequacies or the things that you need to wake up to. And when you don't like it, you move on. It's when you don't like it that you should stick around a little bit longer and see how that saint's particular thing is actually showing or revealing to you where you need to do some work. Possibly. Because what if that particular focus is on the wrong thing? I was just listening this morning to someone who was with the Westboro Baptist Church, and she left. Yeah. And but when you're in the particular thing at the time, especially if you're born into it, you don't see anything wrong. So whatever culture you're in, and you actually genuinely believe that what you're doing is the right thing. But as she was growing up, she's thinking, I don't like this. And I'm starting to read the scripture for myself and recognizing Jesus didn't say that, it's not cursing people, it's blessing people. So to be able to awaken and come out of that, I think that's exceptional, but for us trying to stay awake and recognizing who to admire or follow or connect to, it is a very, I wouldn't say dangerous, but be careful. Yeah. It's easy to get sucked into the group think.
Yep.
That's true. Yeah.
Church can be like that.
What was that?
Church can be like that. Big group think, and someone objects to something, which I've done. It's like, how can you say that? How can you say those
Yeah.
things? How can I not say those things?
Yeah.
So, one of the great practices is to ask yourself, am I a friend of God in this moment? Now, when you do that, you have to understand what that means. It doesn't mean that you have a list of things that you think God likes and doesn't like, and you dislike all of the things that God dislikes and you like all of the things that God likes. It doesn't mean that you try and get other people to do what you think God wants them to do, because along those lines lies tyranny. Do you understand why that is?
Because it's pulling people away from their vision of God, for one thing.
Yeah. Also, people who like to make lists of rules tend to not be remembering God. Consider the Taliban. They have lists of rules. God wants you to do this, 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 and this, and he wants you to not do this, 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 and this. And between those two lists, it comes down to everything that is not mandatory is forbidden. And God doesn't want you to do that, as far as I can tell. And following those lists does not make you a friend of God. You're a friend of God when you care more about God than you care about those lists.
That's where this really is like an organic relationship,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that, you know, with your friend or with your partner, in order to make them happy, it's a dynamic interaction. You're not just going down the checklist of, I do each of these things and this person will be satisfied with me and we'll have a healthy relationship. Or if they go down the checklist and do this list of things for me, we'll have a healthy relationship. We know in practice that that's not true. Levitas asks, is that like recreating God in the image that is most agreeable to you? That's part of it. Or, you know, the one that fits. It might not even be necessarily agreeable to you, but perhaps it's the one that you feel is most acceptable, and you're not open to other alternatives for yourself or for others.
Especially for others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the people who like the lists seem to think that they have God in their back pocket. And that's unfortunate.
Levita adds, as a
Yes.
quote, you know you have recreated God in your own image when he hates the same people you do. Mm-hmm. Is that from something? What is that from?
It's from something.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not certain. I've read that somewhere, but I don't remember where it's from.
Well,
But I was
tonight
trying
it's
to
from
say it
you.
in my own words because
Yes.
no, not smart enough to come up with that one.
I could try and track it down because I know I've seen it from somebody.
Yeah, I don't. That's why I was trying to say it in my own words because I don't remember where I read it.
It's an excellent point, though. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are fictional saints possible?
Sure.
Who's Captain America?
True that. Yeah. I mean, I would think a lot of the stories we have of historical saints tend to be um, what's that? I don't know how to say that word. I know how to read it. It's like hagiography,
Yeah.
but
It's like this.
hagiographical in the sense that it's like there's a lot of pizzazz to the story to kind of create the mystique or build up the mystique. Yeah.
It's like this. Unless the saint is sitting in the room with you at this very moment, it's imaginary. Consider that for a moment. You have stories from the past. Maybe you have ideas for the future. But unless that person is with you right now, they exist only in your imagination. So that's what I got for tonight.
I, I think I have a story that I think reminds me of
Yeah. Please
friends.
share.
So I was walking in the some markets here. Usually there's a lot of people who asking for money, beggars, and I cannot give them all, so I just ask in my heart like, uh, uh, God, please show me who I should give this money to. So show me your friend, that's what I say. So suddenly this old woman walking towards me from the front, and he wear clothes, and on her clothes there's the word my friend. Also, that's my friend. So I give the
Yeah.
money to her.
I
Yeah,
like that
funny.
I
story.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we 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 just awake and like ask God, and he will show us sometimes.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes one of those beggars every now and again is somebody really special.
So we have a question from Levita who asks, so is a quote-unquote saint a role model held up as an example of some important quality the culture wishes to pass on?
You could use them as that. But remember, what a saint actually is a friend of God. So you can look at them and go, can I be a friend like that? And use them as a role model like that.
Yeah, I mean I used the word mentor earlier, and that's
Yeah.
essentially what I mean when I say that. It's kind of like here is a model that feels like a good fit for me in how to create a relationship that feels meaningful to me with the one. And that can evolve from there. It doesn't have to stay within the confines of the model that I have perceived there. Because I mentioned earlier that, any real relationship has this dynamic quality to it. And once the model has kind of been held up as like, I admire this model set forth by this saint, I respect them and appreciate them for who they have been and who they are to me. And I have a separate relationship with them as well. That also has a dynamic quality to it. Nancy says, okay, that was from Anne Lamott, you said. Yes, okay. The quote about God in your own image when he hates all the same people you do. Yes.
Mhm.
Great. Okay. Levitas says, in the saints I know about, they are flawed, and yet they have qualities that make them valuable to God. I think that goes for all of us.
I have a question.
Sure, Sydney.
Maybe it's more of a comment, I don't know. But it seems like there's this aspect of action, like the saint kind of does an action, but it's not the action itself, it's how the action is done. Is this correct?
I think so.
Because if a saint can be, you know, like a tea server, then it's not, you know, he's a saint because he serves tea. It's he's a saint because of how he serves tea.
That's a really good point.
But okay, here's my question then. So if one can become a saint, then the actions that we do have this quality, you know, of how we do them. But does this quality, like, does the actions, do they have a requirement that they serve humanity inherently?
The actions will inherently serve humanity on some level without requirement.
Okay.
You know, some people do good. And the highest form of good is good that is for you and me. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
For some reason, Hitter is coming to mind.
Yeah, the hidden saint. Yeah, and there's some nice stories there, and some strange ones. But I know people who say that Khidr manifested to them at a time of great need. And I always found that interesting. So far, that hasn't happened for me, but I am not worthy. So for me, that's the topic for tonight. I've covered everything that I want to cover. Noor, have you covered everything that you want to cover?
No, yeah, pretty much. I mean, other things may come up and we can talk about them in the forum, of course.
Yes.
Or in the comments below.
Yes, comments below.
So, yeah. Do we have any other thoughts or questions? I think we've heard from pretty much everybody, which is wonderful. Thanks for that.
Yeah. And so exciting, well, exciting for somebody maybe. I was asked this evening if I would consider doing a commentary on the Vijnana Bhairava, which I will probably put together in the next couple of weeks or so. I consider one of the most important texts ever written. And it's only, 112 things that you can do. There's a little talk, and then there's these 112 practices. That's it.
Yeah, so that'll be a fun project.
Yeah. So since I was asked, and given the person who asked me, it's going to be important that I actually do that, whether I want to or not.
Yeah. So I look forward to seeing what comes of that myself.
Yeah. Yeah, well, don't worry. You're going to be studying it alongside me while I refresh my memory.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do the editing on it,
Yeah.
whatever that may look like.
There's going to be a lot of going back and forth between the book and my Sanskrit dictionary because none of the translations are good. My translation won't be good either, but I will give it my best shot.
Well, commentaries are useful.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that's about all we have for this evening. Thank you for joining us. Happy Halloween or happy post-Halloween. Happy All Saints Day. Did you remember that it's All Saints Day tomorrow, Mushtaq?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so that was a timely topic then. I wasn't
Yep.
sure if that was coincidental or not, but
Yeah, that's one of the things that made me think of this topic.
great. Awesome. I like that.
So, yay, all the saints.
All right, everybody. So for this evening, we're gonna log off. We can wave to everybody. We can put us on Brady Bunch mode.
Let me put you on Brady
Sorry,
Bunch
one
mode.
sec, guys.
There we go.
Okay,
now
there we go.
You can
All
wave
right,
to everybody.
waving, yay! All right, great
And we will see
you
everybody
next time.
next time.